I know, I know, I know. We did this already, didn't we? Yes, you're right, we did. But when you've got two slashers from the silver screen who are as revered as Freddy and Jason, it demands nothing but the brightest of lights. Or at the very least, my modest YouTube channel. This is the Ronnie Yu helmed 2003 release, Freddy vs. Jason. Let's talk about it again. So this movie had been in the works for years and was teased strongly at the dumpster fire of a film, Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday. Scripts changed, directors changed, everything changed on this thing numerous times. Yet it felt so surreal to be sitting in a theater, hearing the themes overlap to top one another. And to finally be able to witness a movie centered around Freddy Krueger versus Jason Voorhees. We start this one off like any red-blooded American horror film should start, with a chesty girl running from a very agitated and ill-tempered killer. It's a bit of a cliched scene, but we soon find out what's going on, and it is a dream that Jason Voorhees is having, orchestrated by Mr. Freddy Krueger himself. The goal of which being the people of Elm Street, the children of Elm Street, have essentially forgotten about Freddy, and he needs a way to get them to remember. So, what better way than digging through the scrap heap in hell, finding Jason Voorhees, resurrecting him, using a little bit of trickery, and sending him off to Springwood, Ohio.
Make them remember me, Jason. Make them remember what fear tastes like.
Wouldn't you know it, 1428 Elm Street is packed with attractive, fresh-faced teenagers just waiting for something bad to happen to them. Now we meet Laurie, who is utterly adorable. She's there with her two friends, and when you know it, her two friends invite a couple of boys over. Now this is where we get one of the more iconic death scenes in either franchise, Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street. The obnoxious Trey has just slept with his girlfriend, dismissed her, and now he's laying on a bed drinking a beer. Jason takes serious umbrage with the disrespect that Trey shows his beloved lady, and he proceeds to violently dispatch him and fold him into a bed. The cast here is nothing special. We're starting to lean into that this person's more attractive than the next person thing. All the casts are beautiful. Nobody's awkward. Nobody's goofy. And unfortunately, nobody's all that memorable here. Monica Keena as Laurie is okay as the final girl. Jason Ritter does a good job in his role as her estranged boyfriend who had been locked up at Weston Hills. Robert Englund is always tremendous as Freddy Krueger. But Kane Hodder's absence as Jason is really felt. It's a miss for me. I feel like if you've got the iconic Robert Englund as Freddy, you have to have the most iconic actor playing Jason. Even though it's behind a mask and you don't see his face and you really can't tell, you can still tell. There is a stark difference from this Jason and the Jason that graced our screens in 7, 8, 9, and 10. The rest of the cast is stereotypical, and it just feels like they're there to make sure the body count stays nice and high. Because if you incorporate two serial killers the caliber of Freddy and Jason, you have to have a lot of bodies stacked on top of bodies. There's a cool and somewhat nefarious idea behind the film that the parents are essentially trying to cause their kids to forget about Freddy. They're doing it because they want to keep their kids safe, and I understand it, and I respect it as a dad, but the ones that aren't forgetting Freddy or have too much familiarity with the Dream Demon, they get locked up in Weston Hills, and they're given regular doses of Hypnocil to prevent them from dreaming. Now, keeping them alive is a great and noble cause, but the quality of life for these kids, it kind of sucks. I mean, That's what eventually leads Will and his friend to break out. Now, when you bring these two killers together, if you were told one is going to manipulate the other, it's pretty easy to figure out who's going to do that. Freddy's going to manipulate Jason into doing whatever Freddy wants. Problem is, Jason just does. He doesn't think. There is no reasoning. If you're going to send him out on a path of killing, he's just going to kill people. And unfortunately for Freddy, Jason gets a little too comfortable with hacking up these kids on Elm Street. So much so that Freddy is not able to adequately reclaim his children, as he so often calls them. And that's what sets the stage for the very first physical conflict between these two icons. Freddy takes possession of the stoner, and he cleverly sedates Jason to the point where he's now able to get in Jason's head, and we have our very first battle between the two. Now, the fight in the dream world doesn't disappoint. Freddy uses that to his advantage, but I gotta say, the inclusion of Jason Voorhees being scared of water is a head scratcher, and that's me putting it as gently as I can. Jason spent most of his franchise in the water, around the water, and for them to dismiss that for the sake of this, it's just really odd because they didn't need it. You know, nobody believes that guy's afraid of water. And if you think about it, after you've seen the film, Jason comes up out of the water at the very end of the movie. I mean, he swam to Manhattan in part 8. That's a long way. Aquaphobia set aside, the remainder of this movie is about Freddy battling Jason over the right to kill this middling group of teenage talent. It's bloody, it's brutal. I loved it. It's very over-the-top sort of violence. Freddy all of a sudden is a 5th-degree black belt, and he just takes it to Jason in several points of this fight. The ending was the ending. If anybody thought you were going to get a different ending, you weren't paying attention. These franchises are cash cows, and they have to continue on. And the fact that we never got a follow-up to this one's kind of a bummer because you knew you weren't going to get an Oscar-worthy film. You were just going to get something to entertain you for 90 minutes. And that's what we got here. I still feel like this movie ages gracefully. I gave it a 6.5 out of 10. I think sometimes you just have to appreciate getting these new adventures for characters that you grew up with. Because if you think about it, when was the last Nightmare on Elm Street? When was the last Friday the 13th? It's been over a decade and a half. And if I'm elected president in 2028, you will get new installments of Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th every year for all 4 years of my term. That being said, this is Aging Gracefully. I am Matthew Essex. Thank you for hanging out with us. I'll see you on the other side.